Okay, let's talk about how to develop a clinical management plan with your patient's budget. So, this is a situation that we all face, and we have to figure out how can we really use their patients' limited funds, or some people have lots of funds, but whatever the situation may be, in the most effective and appropriate way. So, I'm not here to talk about how to convince patients to do anything. I don't think you need to convince patients to do anything. I think if they're ready for care and there's already trust built, then you're past all that. Okay. I don't believe in selling programs. I don't believe that you have to influence your patient to anything. So if you created the right environment and let's say you've evaluated your patient, and then let's start with, it comes the time of going, okay, we need to order some lab tests. And one of the questions that always comes up is like, how much lab tests do you want to run? Functional medicine is notorious for having practitioners order way too many tests. And for some reason, especially with new functional medicine practitioners, I think the more tests they order, the more thorough they are. And I think as people get more experience, they tend to fine tune their abilities and to start to pick out priorities and go from there. You have to realize that every time you order a lot of tests with little applications, there's a level of trust you're losing with the patient. And by trust, I mean their belief in you as being competent. So if you order $5,000 worth of test or $2,000 worth of test, and you end up just, doing the same thing you were going to do anyways, and that it really has no benefit, patients pick up on that. And it really does make you look like you do not have the skills of what needs to be done. So maintaining your long-term trust in your patient's abilities, your patient's thoughts about your abilities and your competence is really critical. And I see many practices that fail because of various variables that make the patient no longer trust the practitioner. This happens all the time. And ordering way too many tests is absolutely one of these ways. So typically what I like to do is go, listen, let's say we do an evaluation. So there's some tests I would really like to have done on you. I think it's really critical we do that. Maybe it's just a routine blood chemistry because I haven't had one for a long time. Maybe they have raging gastrointestinal issues and you want to run a GI panel, and you think they may have SIBO. You might want to run a SIBO panel, and then you may come up with like, okay, well, what's your budget? Like, how do you? And then, what I find that's very effective is just to tell them what I'm thinking. Like, I go, hey, listen, we have a lot of gastrointestinal issues. If we have testing, it can be very useful for us. We can have some objective information. There's some things we just don't know. Like, we don't know if you have any kind of pathogens or parasites or various things. It's hard to tell without a GI panel. Things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, you might have that. That would explain a lot of your symptoms. But sometimes we can just implement a diet, like a FODMAP diet, and see if you respond to that. That would be a gold standard approach as well. So do you want to test both of those? Do you want to just test one and then go, these are the cost of this panel, what's the cost of this panel? What do you want to do? What's the approach you want to take? And I really explain the benefits, the pros and cons of each type of test and how we can work with it. Also times there's periods where the patient may want to test a lot of things. I go, hey, listen, we're going to test a lot of things because you want to, but you may change. Like, we may not get to everything at once. And the things we may initially do may take 3 to 4 months. Maybe it'll take 3 to 4 months for us. Let's say you're stabilizing the blood sugar levels or trying to improve some lifestyle factors and sleep and those things first, and say your physiology may change in the next 4 to 5 months. And if we use the information we have now 4 to 5 months later, it just won't make any sense. So it'd be better to run that test at that time. So it really depends on your situation, but having this open discussion is really important. And it's so critical that you do not do too much testing, right? If you do too much testing, you're really going to lose your patient's trust and their ability and your confidence, and you're less likely to have them follow through with further testing down the road. So you want to sit down with them and explain what's going on, and let them be an active participant in what really is their priorities and what they want to check. If you're having to talk a person into something, it's always a bad idea. It's always a red flag. Like, if you're the person trying to convince someone to get something done, it's like that relationship is already not healthy. And if they can't afford it, you can't do the test. But you may have to say, listen, let's say they needed the GI panel. because they may have some pathogenic bugs. So like, we're just not going to know what bugs you have unless we test. Some bugs require long-term treatment. Some lay eggs that have to be retreated over and over again. You may not have any pathogens there. The test itself might not be 100% perfect. You may spend money on tests, and it's just a total waste of time because we don't really get any useful information on it. And then I think once the patient really understands all these different factors, it becomes much easier to build trust with them, and then having that ongoing discussion, and they can really start to think about what they want to do. Now, what many people do, and especially in the beginning, is just order way too many tests. Totally lose patient trust. All this information comes in. Patient's confused. And many times a practitioner that's ordering all these tests, they don't even know how to read all these tests very well or how to put it all together. That creates its own problem. So the clinical profile this month is be very cautious of how many tests you order. Narrow down the approach you want to take. Have that open discussion with the patient of what is immediately important, what are the pros and cons of getting the testing, what you can do, not what you can do without the testing, and give them the ability to decide what's best for them versus trying to convince them that they need something. So I think if you're in the position of convincing and doing way too many labs, it's really going to hurt your practice. If you're allowing the patient to understand the pros and cons and benefits and limitations of having test and not having test, and then they become the active decision maker without any convincing, everything is much, much, much smoother. So that's the clinical pearl for this module. I hope you find it useful. Thank you.